I never imagined that the happiest day of my daughter's life would become the darkest memory of mine. People always talk about weddings as magical moments. The white dress, the music, the smiles, the proud parents watching their little girl start a new life. I dreamed about that moment for years. I thought it would be the day I would finally be rewarded, the day she would hug me and whisper, "Thank you, Mom. None of this would have been possible without you." But what I got was very different. As I stood in that hall, surrounded by flowers, lights, and the applause of people I barely knew, my heart was trembling with both pride and fear. My hands were shaking because I was nervous, nervous that everything would go perfectly for her, nervous that she would look at me with gratitude in her eyes. And yet, in the middle of what should have been the happiest celebration, she turned to me with a face twisted by anger and whispered words that cut deeper than any knife. "You ruined my wedding, Mom." I froze. The music kept playing. People kept laughing and dancing. But for me, the world stopped spinning. It was as if every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so she could eat, all of it collapsed into dust in a single moment. I thought mothers and daughters shared an unbreakable bond, forged in pain and love. But that night, I realized that bond could snap with just a sentence. When I left that wedding hall, my shoes in my hand, tears running down my cheeks, and the night swallowing me whole, I understood something painful but true. Sometimes, the ones we love most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And that was the night I made a decision that would not only change my life, but hers as well. Because love without respect isn't love at all. My name is Eleanor, and I'm a mother of 3. People often think being a single mother is a choice, or worse, a mistake. But in my case, it was survival. My husband walked out when my youngest was barely 2 years old. He left me with debts, 3 hungry mouths, and a heart that could have chosen to break but didn't. I remember the first nights after he left. The silence in the house was unbearable. I had to force myself to stop crying because my kids needed me strong. I worked during the day at a diner, refilling coffee cups and pretending to smile at strangers who never knew the pain I carried. At night, when the world was asleep, I cleaned offices. My hands would crack from the cleaning chemicals. My knees ached from scrubbing floors, but I told myself, as long as my children eat, as long as they grow, I can bear it. We didn't have much, but I made sure they had enough. I skipped meals so they could have seconds. I patched up clothes instead of buying new ones. I learned to make miracles with a bag of rice and a can of beans. And through all of it, I reminded them, we may not have money, but we have love. Sarah, my eldest, was always the dreamer. She was the one who looked beyond our small town, who craved a life of elegance, beauty, and prestige. I admired her for it, even when it hurt. She wanted more than I could give. She looked at magazines and whispered, "One day I'll have this." I nodded, silently promising myself that I would help her get there, even if it killed me. Her siblings didn't resent her ambitions, but they noticed how much of myself I gave to her. I paid for her extra school activities, her trips, her books. When she applied for university, I celebrated with her, even as I wondered how I'd afford the tuition. I sold the small jewelry my mother had left me, the only heirlooms I owned, to cover her first semester. Sarah never asked me to make those sacrifices, but she also never told me not to. She just accepted them, as if it was my duty, as if mothers were meant to give until there was nothing left. And maybe that's true, but deep down I longed for a thank you. Just once. When she fell in love with Michael, her fiancé, I saw her dreams take shape. He came from a wealthy family. His parents were the kind of people who vacationed in Europe, who wore suits even at casual dinners, who never had to worry about bills. I knew Sarah felt pressure to impress them. And so, when the engagement was announced, she came to me with that look I knew too well, the look of expectation. "Mom, this wedding has to be perfect," she said, her voice both pleading and demanding. "It's not just about me, it's about us. I need Michael's family to see that I come from class, from people who matter." I smiled, even though my chest tightened. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make it happen." But the truth was, I had no idea how. In the months that followed, I stretched myself thinner than ever. I took double shifts. I borrowed money from friends I swore I'd pay back. I sold the small plot of land my parents had left me, the last tangible piece of my own history, just to cover catering deposits. Every night, when I collapsed on the couch after a 16-hour day, I looked at the growing wedding binder on the kitchen table. Pages of expenses, designs, flower arrangements, all things that seemed so far from the life I knew. Yet I told myself, it's for her happiness. One day, she'll see how much you did. I didn't want glory. I didn't want repayment. I just wanted to be remembered as the mother who always stood behind her children. The months leading up to the wedding were some of the hardest of my life. What should have been a season of joy felt more like walking a tightrope, where every wrong step could destroy everything I was working for. Sarah had a very clear vision of her perfect wedding. It wasn't just about flowers or the dress, it was about status. She wanted her wedding to outshine every event her fiancé's wealthy family had ever attended. And for some reason, she believed I could make that happen. I remember the endless list she handed me. Orchids imported from overseas, a string quartet, gold-trimmed invitations, a designer gown. Every item felt like a mountain I had no strength to climb. I tried to suggest simpler alternatives, but she brushed them off quickly. "Mom, I can't have my in-laws thinking we're cheap," she'd say, her tone clipped. There were nights when I would sit at the kitchen table with invoices spread all around me, tears burning my eyes as I calculated what bill I could delay to cover the next wedding deposit. The electricity bill, the loan payment, the groceries, it all had to wait. Every dollar I earned vanished into the black hole of her expectations. I don't think Sarah realized the weight I was carrying. Or maybe she did and chose not to look. She was consumed by fittings, rehearsals, photo shoots. I became her shadow, the silent hand making everything possible. There were cracks in our relationship that started to show. Once, during a particularly tense conversation about the cake, I suggested we order a local baker instead of the famous patisserie from the city. She rolled her eyes. "Mom, please. This isn't some small-town birthday party. This is my wedding. Try to act like it matters." Her words stung. Try to act like it matters. As if the sleepless nights, the extra shifts, the sacrifices weren't proof enough. But I swallowed my pride. I told myself it's stress. Brides get nervous. She doesn't mean it. My other two children watched everything quietly. I saw the hurt in their eyes when I missed their soccer games or their school play rehearsals because I was too busy working or running errands for the wedding. One night, my youngest asked me, "Mom, do you love Sarah more than us?" My heart broke. I hugged him tightly and whispered, "Of course not. I love you all the same." But I knew, deep down, my actions told another story. The week of the wedding arrived. The house was filled with dresses, makeup artists, and planners rushing around. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The atmosphere was suffocating, and yet, I told myself the storm would pass once the big day came. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up before sunrise. I pressed my simple dress and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection was tired, worn, older than my years. My hands trembled slightly, cracked and rough from years of work, but I applied a little makeup to hide the exhaustion. This wasn't my day. I wasn't supposed to shine. I only wanted Sarah to look at me and feel proud, even for just a moment. As I walked into the reception hall later that evening, I saw it. Chandeliers glittering, tables dressed in white and gold, music filling the air. It was breathtaking, and yet all I could think was, this beauty came at a cost nobody else will ever understand. Everything seemed perfect. Guests were smiling. Her in-laws looked impressed, and Sarah, she looked radiant, like she had stepped out of one of those magazines she always adored. For a moment, my heart swelled. Maybe, just maybe, it had all been worth it. But fate has a way of reminding us that even the most carefully planned nights can fall apart in an instant. The wedding had started beautifully, just as Sarah had dreamed. Music played, flowers glimmered in the candlelight, and everyone seemed to float on happiness. I had hoped this would be the moment she looked at me with gratitude, that she would see all the sacrifices I had made to give her the life she wanted. I stood quietly at the edge of the dance floor, holding a glass of champagne, ready to toast her. My heart was pounding. My hand shook, not from nerves alone, but from the weight of years of silent sacrifice. I cleared my throat and began to speak softly, trying not to draw too much attention to myself. I've watched you grow into an incredible woman, I started, my voice trembling. Every step you've taken, every dream you've chased, I have tried to support you. I am proud of the person you are, and I wish you and Michael a life full of happiness and love. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat, hoping she would smile, that her eyes would glisten with appreciation. But as I looked at Sarah, the expression on her face made my stomach drop. She was glaring at me, her lips pressed tight, her jaw stiff. My words seemed to hit her like a slap. I said enough, she whispered, loud enough for some guests to hear. Stop trying to make this about you. You ruined my wedding. The words hit me harder than anything I had ever experienced. Ruin my wedding? I stood frozen, the champagne glass slipping slightly in my hand. Around me, guests began to murmur. Some looked confused, others shocked. My children stared, mouths open, their faces pale with disbelief. She continued, her voice rising. Couldn't you just stay silent for once? Every moment, you have to make this about yourself. I can't believe you thought this would be okay. I wanted to speak, to explain, to tell her that every penny, every sleepless night, every ounce of effort I had poured into this day was for her, not me. But the words caught in my throat. No explanation could reach her. She had built walls of anger so high that nothing I said could penetrate them. I remember the look of the in-laws, stiff and polite, pretending to smile while their eyes flicked between us. My own heart ached. It was a public humiliation, a betrayal, and it happened in front of everyone I cared about, in the very moment that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Tears ran down my cheeks, but I refused to let them fall openly. I turned silently and walked away, ignoring the whispers and stares. Each step felt heavier than the last. I left the hall, the laughter and music fading behind me, replaced by the deafening silence of betrayal and heartbreak. Outside, under the night sky, I breathed deeply. The cold air stung my face and mixed with my tears. I walked to my car, my hands trembling, my body shaking from the release of years of tension. It was more than anger, it was grief, a deep and painful grief for the daughter who I thought would always understand me, who now seemed a stranger. And in that quiet, lonely moment, I made a decision that would not be about punishment, but about reclaiming my dignity. For years, I had given everything for this family. I had been the silent supporter, the invisible engine behind their lives. But now I realized that love without respect was not love, it was submission. I opened my desk drawer that night when I returned home. The will was there, a paper I had not thought of in years. My hands hovered over the pen, trembling as I wrote her name out of it. I paused, thinking of the years, the love, the memories. But the memory of her words, her public humiliation, and her complete disregard for my efforts fueled me. This was not revenge, it was self-respect. And as I signed, a strange sense of peace washed over me. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from the weight of unappreciated sacrifices. Free from the expectation that my life should revolve around the whims of a child who could not see the value of my love. That night, I understood something profound. Sometimes the hardest act of love is letting go of the people who refuse to see it. The days after the wedding were quiet, almost eerily so. Sarah didn't call me for weeks, and when she did, her voice was cold, clipped, and demanding. She asked for details about her honeymoon arrangements, expecting me to swoop in and fix everything. But I had made my choice. I responded calmly, without anger. Sarah, I love you. I always have. But I can no longer sacrifice my dignity for someone who refuses to see the value of my love. This ends now. She laughed, assuming I was exaggerating. But the truth was unwavering. I had spent decades giving, bending, and stretching myself to fill gaps that no one else noticed. And for what? To be told I ruined a day that I had given everything to make perfect? To be humiliated in front of hundreds of people I cared about? Weeks turned into months. My 2 younger children were supportive. They understood. More than Sarah ever could. We spent time together, healing from the invisible wounds left by years of misplaced expectations. I began to feel a lightness I hadn't known in years, a sense of self-worth that was no longer tied to her approval. When my time eventually came, the will became the ultimate confirmation of my choice. My two other children inherited everything I had. Sarah was left with nothing, financially, yes, but also emotionally. She had learned, too late, that the foundation of a relationship isn't money or appearances, it's respect, gratitude, recognition. I have no illusions that she fully understood the magnitude of her actions. But those who observed us over the years whispered quietly. Eleanor had shown strength in the face of cruelty, dignity in the face of humiliation. She had drawn a line that no insult, no spite, no moment of ingratitude could cross. Looking back, I realized that the story isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about understanding the boundaries of love. A parent can give endlessly, but when that love is met with contempt, a choice must be made. Do you continue to sacrifice yourself, hoping for recognition that may never come? Or do you reclaim your life and dignity, leaving behind those who refuse to see your value? I chose the latter. And in doing so, I learned a lesson every parent should remember. Love is powerful, but it is not limitless. Respect and gratitude are the pillars that hold it up. Without them, love can crumble into resentment, pain, and humiliation. Sometimes the bravest act a mother, or anyone, can make is to step back, to remove herself from toxicity, and to stand firm in her worth. It is not selfish. It is survival. It is teaching by example. My daughter may have thought she was punishing me, but in reality, I had preserved myself. I had drawn a boundary that no words could cross, no insult could erase. And in that boundary, I found freedom, self-respect, and a love for myself that had been buried under years of sacrifice. The story serves as a reminder. Those who truly love you will see your efforts. Those who don't will reveal themselves in moments of selfishness and cruelty. And when that happens, it's not weakness to step away, it's courage.